everybody, to another episode of our Puget Systems live Q&A show. We're joined by recently now senior video workflow architect Ian Sansavera, formerly of One Up Studios, Team Liquid. I don't recall your exact title, but worked for them.
Yeah. I was director of post-production for Team Liquid for almost 7 years.
Right on. So normally I would have said, in case anybody doesn't already know who you are, give yourself a little intro of who you are and what you do. But I feel like maybe we covered that a little bit. Would you like to expand on that at all?
Sure. Yeah. Previously director of post-production for Team Liquid. I've been editing videos since I was like 11 years old, 12 years old. Knew I wanted to do this from a very, very early age. YouTube had just come around and I was like, digital video is the future. I'm going to pursue this for the rest of my life. I was very fortunate to have had that epiphany very early on. And so I've been following it ever since. Just left Team Liquid to join Runway ML, which is a company that's doing AI and machine learning video editing tools and building a video editing platform entirely based on the web. And the technology that they have been working on for years is very, very impressive. And so I saw, we both saw a need for somebody like me to come in and kind of help steer the ship and help the designers and the engineers like make it work more like a video editing platform and not just kind of a collection of tools that you can use to impress somebody. So yeah, new chapter, new step, still in video editing world. I also have a YouTube channel called Learn How to Edit Stuff. So if you have ever been frustrated on why your sequence isn't exporting properly, you may have seen my face in a thumbnail on YouTube telling you how to fix it. So to say that I'm obsessed with editing is an understatement. And that's why we're here.
That's cool. I like how you said that. I'm obsessed with editing. What is it about editing that is so rad?
It's so funny. So when my friends and I were making YouTube videos back in high school, I helped shoot it, I helped act in it, and I also helped edit it. And the editing part was like the thing for me that was, I could never see the bottom of the pool. It's just so deep and you can do so many cool things. And now with the advancement of technology, it's like, oh, if I want to casually dabble in like 3D animation, cool. Like download Blender, it's free, right? Like you and I were just talking before this got started, the barrier to entry is so low and there's so many things to explore. And so I think I held on to that from a very early age. And I don't know. I always really liked it. And I had a professor in college tell me that, the director is going to try to convince you that they're the director, but the editor is the real director. And I was like, interesting. So I kind of like the veil of control, right? Of like being able to, be the one that's crafting the story and telling the narrative and all that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of different things I liked about it. And I still do, which is fantastic. Most people get burned out by this point, I think. You have to really like it. So
I feel like that's true for all, like pretty much anything. Like if you're not in it 100% like with your soul, then you're just gonna get bored and quit.
I don't know the demographic of people that watch this program, but if you're young enough and you know something that you're passionate about, don't listen to what people are telling you to go be a doctor or a lawyer if you don't want to do it. Like if you want to be a travel photographer, pursue it, because if that's the thing that makes you happy, then that's gonna be the thing that continues to make you happy for the rest of your life. And that's super, super important when you're spending 40 plus hours a week doing something. You have to really like it.
Man, it just makes me reminisce from when I was a kid. It was right when esports was really starting to take off. Fatality was like the guy, right? Like $1 million. It was like the first one to win $1 million at like a Unreal tournament, 2004 sort of thing. And I was like, oh man, that's legit. Like this guy made real money playing video games. Like that's so cool. And I really wish I had doubled down on it more.
Like being in the esports world, the delta of success in esports is so small because you have a lifespan of your hand-eye coordination. Like it's all these little things that you don't think about, right? Hand-eye coordination. And then the game developers, to keep their game interesting, well, with most games, modern games at least, they change the game. They change the rules every couple of weeks. And that's crazy. Like imagine if basketball changed the rules every 2 weeks. Like it would be a completely different game. And so in esports and competitive gaming, they add a new map to the rotation, new character, they buff some abilities, they nerf some abilities. It's it's crazy. But then you have guys like that have been playing Super Smash Brothers Melee for years,
Right.
and they're still killing it, and it's like still insane. So yeah, there's definitely both sides of it. And yeah, back then probably it is not as encouraged to play video games all day as it potentially is now, right? Because you see these people that are making 7 figures a year playing video games, and people's parents are like, oh, okay, like my kid's pretty good at Fortnite. Like, where can this go? You never know. We live in a crazy world, man. We live in a crazy world.
I'm endlessly fascinated at where we've come from early days of the internet and things.
The bell curve is like a brick. It just goes straight up.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I remember like we were just talking about this too, oh, the internet is a thing, dial-up, AOL, like Napster, LimeWire. Okay, cool. And now it's like I can control satellites from my Apple Watch. Like I don't even know what's going on anymore, dude. I don't know.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's something that I love so much. Just the advancement of technology and where we've come from way back in the day. It's just super cool.
Yeah.
So on the topic of esports, I'm going to touch on this one. Versus, so you were director of post-production, but this still has a lot of fingers into the whole flow of video production for Team Liquid. What are some of the differences in storytelling from one piece of content to another within that framework, but then also compared to, say, like a vlog or tech reviews or even just like film, like Hollywood filmmaking?
Yeah. Not all storytelling is created equal. Not all video is the same. All projects are different, right? And so you have to start by looking at what the context of the project is. Okay. Specifically within esports, you can pretty much divide it into 2 camps. Camp number 1 is like FPS shooters, right? Your Call of Duties, your Valorants, your CSGO. And that attracts a very different audience that consumes a very different style of content than your audience that consumes League of Legends, Hearthstone, StarCraft. Very different, right? Like,
okay, sure.
So I think with any filmmaking, regardless if it's esports or not, you have to understand your target audience and who you want to consume the content. And then you almost have to like tailor it to be appealing to them. Otherwise, you're not going to get the result that you want. And if you're doing it for yourself, it's going to lead to disappointment. And if you're doing it for a paycheck, it's going to lead to like career improvements because like the videos aren't performing the way that we need them to. So there is some element of like, looking into the future a little bit and kind of seeing who's going to watch these things and almost tailoring the story for that person to generate some sort of success. There are very few instances where somebody just like digs down deep into their soul and makes the thing that they've been having dreams about since they were 6 years old and it like ends up changing the world. Like those are very few instances, especially when you're dealing with like marketing metrics and user retention and like all these buzzwords that you're going to hear in the video creating community. You have to take that into consideration because that's what you're being judged on. And a good story isn't enough anymore. So it really like storytelling depends on 5 or 6 other factors that you have to consider before you dive in on something, at least for me, because I've done music videos and marketing stuff and commercials and food shows and esports shows, both winning and losing. And you kind of have to see the end result before you do anything. And I think that's part of editing, part of being an editor is you have to be able to see what this thing looks like and convince the people that are, yes men, usually like agency people. Oh yeah. Is this color graded? Like you have to be able to navigate all that stuff and see the end result and be, strong in your path.
Sure.
And it takes a certain amount of mental fortitude to be able to do that day in and day out. So yeah, it's different for every situation, I think.
Okay. I'm curious, like, I suppose when you're dealing with a big, like Team Liquid's no joke, right?
Yeah.
Is it difficult to get some, or rather, is there a disconnect between, say, the boots on the ground in a sense, the guys who are actually making this content versus like the higher ups who say, I saw this thing is trending on TikTok, so we have to do that. Is it a difficult push and pull there?
Sometimes that exists. I have to imagine in every industry. That is not an esports only thing. That is not a Team Liquid only thing.
Oh, sure.
The CEO gets a text from his nephew and they're like, check out this TikTok. And he sees it and he's like, 8 million views. Oh, we need to be doing more TikTok stuff. Like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
In esports specifically, you have cases where you either win or you lose, right? And the winning
Sure.
stories are more triumphant and they're epic and they have cool montages and it's like a thing and maybe there's some turmoil and then it ends up, resulting in this big crazy thing. And then you have the losing stories, which is, you got to bust out your royalty-free sad piano music and you got to do this thing. And then, in esports across the board on all teams, you sneeze wrong during a match and like you're off the team,
Sure.
So there's a lot of like new people coming in and like what's that new dynamic like and trying to like tell those stories. And then you also have to be respectful to the athletic side.
Yeah.
And if they go, get these cameras out of my face, man, like I can't have you guys here, you're a distraction. Now what story do you tell? Do you go to the higher ups and say, hey, we actually can't make a thing because the team is tilted and they don't want us there? Or do you just put some text on screen that says, after a struggle with blah blah blah, the team went into a closed session that we weren't allowed into? And everything is taken in stride. Like very rarely, I think, unless you're like building an IKEA furniture piece, very rarely will things follow the way that you think they're going to go,
sure,
start to finish, especially in creative stuff where a light burns out on set and now your chroma key is messed up and like, what are you going to do? Like, how do I fix this problem? How can I navigate this? Do we remove it? Do we leave it in? And it just, you ever see those like, the little branch web things where you're like, you're born, and then it kind of goes off and it's like, adolescence is only 2, and then like young adult, and then it's like, that's what filmmaking is and editing. Sure. It's just this crazy tree that's impossible to follow, but it will eventually end up getting to a place. And that's, that's what matters.
Wow. I've done, I don't know, like 110 episodes doing this, and it's always super cool to hear those kind of stories and stuff that they're very similar, but also like the challenges seem similar, no matter what, but at the same time, like the solutions and the goals are different, and it's really cool. I'm always happy to learn these new things behind the scenes and whatnot and show that off to everybody.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I have a video on my channel. If Premiere is crashing, what do you do? Right? Like that's one of my videos. All video editors that are using Adobe software encounter this. It is not a new thing. But what's crazy is that there's like 12 different ways that you can solve the same problem. And like, which one is going to work for you today?
Yeah.
And I feel that way about most things when it comes to creative stuff. There's 5 different solutions to the problem, but like which one is going to afford you the best solution? And also which one isn't going to like back you into a corner? Because you can take the easy route, and then all of a sudden you get 5 steps down the road and you're like, oh man, I really wish I wouldn't have gone that direction because now I'm even in a worse spot than I was earlier. So yeah, I think that's just when somebody says, oh, you're so good at this. You're not actually good. Like you can only go so far with technical proficiency. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're going to teach somebody how to like frost a cake, like you can only learn how to frost a cake so many ways. The success metric comes from like navigating the situations and knowing the tools to get you out of them. And also it's like future-proof your own steps in getting there. That's where the big difference is between somebody who's really good at editing and somebody who's like just starting out is just the amount of time and the amount of issues that you've run into and knowing how to like navigate them.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's not focused on enough. The
I agree.
Problem solving side of a lot of work, honestly. Because you can go through training and stuff. You can go, there's video editing courses and you can go to school for this sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you're going to run into something that you weren't taught or don't have the, a habit for. And that's really going to determine how good you are at what you do is how you handle those situations.
Absolutely. There's a phrase, there's no such thing as bad weather, only inappropriate clothes. And I feel like that if you break it down to its foundation, that saying actually like transcends any situation. It's like you need to be prepared. And the only way you're going to be prepared is by having gone through it before.
Sure.
So getting stuck in a snowstorm in a t-shirt, you're like, okay, I'm going to bring my jacket, right? Like, and it's with any career path that you're in, it's you're gonna hit those points.
Yeah. So, other than YouTube, because I've asked this question before, and a lot of it seems to be coming back to YouTube. Other than YouTube, where do you turn to when you have a problem?
Reddit.
Reddit, yeah.
Reddit is great,
Yeah.
especially for things like creative work,
Mm.
right? Because you're like, oh, I'm having this one issue, and then like some dude in like northern Vermont is like, I've figured this out already, and he's like keyboard warrior, ready to answer your question. So yeah, I go to Reddit a lot. I have a lot of friends. It's so funny. I always hate being that person that's like, hey, how do you make a biscuit? And somebody's like, just Google it, dude. Like, you know, so I have friends that are also editors and creative professionals that I try to exhaust other options before I go to them. Because I also get annoyed by that too, which is like, how do I start a sequence? And you're like, really, you're asking me to explain it to you? That could be easily found somewhere else.
Right.
So yeah, there's stepping stones to solving a problem, at least for me, right?
Oh yeah.
For me personally, I try to figure it out on my own, and I spend probably way too much time trying to do it, because if you can actually figure out a solution, you kind of like gain XP as a human being, right?
Yeah,
You can now take that information and teach somebody else how to do it. You can post it publicly on the internet so anybody can access that information. You can hoard it and hold on to it yourself and tell nobody. It's great. You have so many different options. But yeah, I try to figure it out myself. And then step number 2 is going to the internet and trying to find somebody on Reddit, usually who has done it. Twitter randomly has a lot of like good creative advice. And then my nuclear option is, hey, asking you a question because I legitimately have not figured it out yet, hoping that you have an answer. But yeah, that's at least my process. But everybody's process is different.
I'm very similar. I hate bothering another person with it is my last recourse. I have to, because I mean I get a little bugged about it sometimes too when it's something I think is something simple or like couldn't have Googled that, you know.
Do you think it's a guy thing? Because like I don't follow directions when I put stuff together.
I don't know.
My wife loves asking people for directions when we're in public. I hate it. I'm like, don't go up to that person. We're gonna find it ourselves. This is furniture comes. I throw the instructions over my shoulder. I'm like, this is easy enough. We're just gonna figure it out.
Yeah, there might be something to that. Yeah, huh?
I don't know. Worth exploring. I'm not a psychiatrist, so
no,
we shouldn't go too deep on it.
Yeah. So you're recently working for Runway ML, or at least that's their website. It's Runway.
Runway ML. The ML stands for machine learning. There's kind of like 2 sections of Runway ML. The Runway side, which is the video editor side, and then ML Labs, which is like community, not funded, but like community sourced, like crazy codes, and like you can run things and make things look like Picasso pictures and do generative image stuff. Yeah. It's crazy. And like the story of how I got to the job is actually kind of interesting.
Sure.
Usually I'm sitting at my computer, an email comes in to my learn how to edit stuff email, and it's somebody wanting me to demo their product or somebody wanting to pay me for a collaboration and blah, blah, blah. So I get a lot of those emails, right? And I'll go and look at it. And 9 times out of 10, I'm like, this is stupid. And I don't do a video on it because my YouTube channel was never started to make money. It was started to educate the public and to be a better creator. It's always been a side project, like a hobby of mine, which is why I haven't like really accepted money from like, you know, InShot or whatever, Wondershare. They hit me up all the time. How many thousands of dollars? I'm like, no, I don't want to demo this because it's like, I don't find it useful. So Runway, the CEO, Cristobal, reached out to me and he was like, hey, love your channel. We're working on some stuff I think you might think is really cool. And so I went to the website and I was like, oh, interesting. So I, signed up for the free account or whatever, got in there. And at the time, it was just their essentially single click rotoscope tool called
they got a demo on that right on their front page.
Yeah, and I just made that demo. The new website is live, so huzzah. But yeah, so anyway, we'll get there.
Okay.
So I go to this thing and I upload a video and I single click. I'm like, single click rotoscope, right? And this is coming off the back of like me working with Adobe on the Roto Brush 2 stuff, and like everyone was so excited, and I was even excited because I thought it worked really well until I used Runway's platform, and I was like, holy mother of God, like it really did, like and it didn't take me long. It takes 1/4 the amount of time or less to do it through Runway than it did with Roto Brush 2. And if you watch my YouTube channel, I say all the time is money. Time is money. Time is money. I would rather pay money to save time than spend a bunch of time to save money, because time is the one resource that none of us can get back, and it's the most valuable thing that we have. So what can you do to cut down the amount of time, whatever the time to money equation that you want to live by, figure it out. Mine is like, my time is the most priority, and then money is kind of down here. So it worked really well. I was super impressed. And then I just started using Runway more, not even the green screen stuff, like the editor and stuff. And so I compiled this like 3-page list of like improvements that I think would be amazing to see. And I scheduled an interview with the CEO and I was like, hey man, this is really crazy. You guys are working on insane stuff. Here's a bunch of stuff that I think could be really cool to think about. And he was like, oh, wow, this is, pretty valuable feedback. Went back to his engineering team, I guess, talked about it because like a week or two later, I logged into Runway and I'd seen that they had already started implementing some of the stuff that I brought up. And I was like, wow, these guys work really fast. And the technology is really, really cool. And then months went by and they changed some stuff on the back end of the website and my account got messed up or something. So I emailed the CEO and I was like, hey, my account got all messed up. Is there a way that we can fix this? Because like I really want to use Runway right now. It's like I'm trying to save time. And he was like, hey, can we schedule a meeting? And this was like, I think like 3 days before Christmas. And so he calls me and he's like, hey man, like, is YouTube your full-time gig? Like, what are you trying to do? And I was like, no, man, like I'm director of post-production for Team Liquid. I was like kind of being vetted for a creative director position there. So I was like mid-shift. And, for what it's worth, I'd kind of already been interviewing at a couple other places at this point. And none of them really jumped out to me as being like an exciting opportunity. And I didn't want to leave Team Liquid for the sake of leaving Team Liquid. I really wanted my next thing to be something unique and something special. And so he was like, can we offer you a job? And I was like, well, what would you want me to do? And he was like, I don't know, like work with our engineering team and like, suggest feature improvements and work with our designers and suggest workflow improvements and help us launch our, educational series that we're doing, like teach people how to use the thing, because their vision for the company, and I happen to identify with this, is 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Why isn't a fully functioning editing system that's all web-based not possible? Like, it's crazy. I had a weird epiphany moment yesterday. I uploaded a bunch of footage from my desktop, and then I grabbed my laptop and I walked downstairs. I opened it up and like just kept going with all the. It was like cool. 5-6 gigs. It wasn't anything huge, but like 5-6 gigs worth of footage, and like I'm just right to where it's on a completely different machine, right? Yeah. And I have this absolutely gorgeous, beautiful purring kitten of a computer that you guys built me, which is amazing. And it's my daily driver. 95% of everything I do is on this thing. But having the ability to just grab a laptop and walk downstairs, or heaven forbid something catastrophic happens, I can run to Best Buy, buy a $200 Chromebook, and like be doing the same level of things that you know what I'm saying? It's crazy. So the future is wild. It's going to continue to get even wilder. And I'm excited to be a part of something that is building a platform for creatives to express themselves in a very unique and different way that's never been done before. Yeah. And I think that was the thing that I was looking for as my next step in my career, is like, how can I give, a 10-year-old who's just discovering video editing that spark to want to follow this pathway like I did when I was that young? And like, what are the things that I can do there? So Runway checked all those boxes for me. And now here we are.
That's super cool. And this, I'm poking around on here, and you can see that they've got a great start. And I think it was really smart with the background removal, the rotoscope thing. I think that is a good like feature to highlight in the beginning, because I feel like that's so tedious.
It is.
I haven't done it myself, but
it's the worst.
It seems. Yeah,
it's the worst. And we our product team interviews a lot of our users just from all walks of life, video professionals, complete novices, all over the map. We were talking to this guy the other day who is a small business owner, like a barbecue restaurant owner. And he was like, I bought a green screen and it's a pain in the ass to set up and all this stuff. And like, I don't have enough space and all this stuff. And like Runway was his solution, because he just wanted to be able to have green screen functionality without having to like set a thing up behind him and like get lights and like, man, shadows, like, oh God, green screen, like actual green screen, chroma key work is annoying, right? So having the ability to use machine learning and AI and like train these algorithms to extract you from a background, something that is notoriously extremely difficult to do, is amazing. And from where I used it initially when they first reached out to me to where it is now, it works so much better and it's so much faster. And the improvements that we're seeing in performance along the way are getting a lot better. So yeah, man, it's very strange for me to go from an industry that I spent 7 years in to now completely switching gears. I'm in a new industry, new company, like Team Liquid's like I don't know, 300 full-time employees.
Wow.
I was the 18th person in the Runway. 18th.
Wow.
Small team doing crazy things. And so it's just, yeah, it's very, I started on January 18th. So I'm not even a month into the job yet. And it's been very cool and very fun. And I'm learning so much and trying things that I've never tried before and talking to these engineers that know how to do like the craziest things of all time. So yeah, it's very, very interesting.
No, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think I came across someone demoing, I think it was through Runway. I think this may be a feature that isn't officially released yet. It was depth mapping from in video, and I think they were showing it from a context of like autofocus sort of thing. He was dragging this thing around, and it was changing the focus of the film, and that's amazing. That's amazing too. And to see like they had a sort of like it was almost like inverted. You could see the depth map data. I guess it was like gray and dots and stuff. And wow, like
it's crazy.
That's not something that's just in the video data.
No, it's well, I mean, it is and it isn't. It's when you combine it with like these crazy algorithms that are doing these things, it becomes available. And what I'm finding really interesting in talking with our engineers is like, what's possible using that data, right?
Sure.
What becomes possible? 3D camera tracking now gets like this crazy improvement because you have like Z-axis information, which is like not really a thing unless you're using like a LiDAR on your camera.
Sure.
And most people aren't doing that, right? So the possibilities I think are kind of endless, and I think Runway specifically is doing really, really amazing work. I've tried other things that like don't work as well.
Sure.
So yeah, man, I'm excited and to see where we're going in the future. And we've quietly rolled out a new feature to all of our users as of like yesterday. I think 100% of people have access to it, but the official announcement for it I think is coming tomorrow, maybe today. Am I spoiling anything? It's in painting. You can go and literally just like remove a person from a video and it looks like they were never there in the first place. It's wild. And it works super, super well.
Wow. Oh, I love how there's clear inspiration from Adobe here. That's content aware fill. Right. But it seems that from because it's like a smaller team, and I feel like you guys are coming from a little bit of a different angle on it. It seems a little better.
So I forget who said this to me, and it stuck with me. Runway is built on a foundation of machine learning and AI. Adobe is trying to infuse machine learning and AI into a foundation that is not machine learning and AI. So in that sense, you run into these weird cross-compatibility issues of like some parts of it work really well and some parts of it don't, because in order for it to work really well, the base layer of it has to be also on that same level. And so with Runway, it's like, you know, you can go and dig back through all these research papers that they've done and like a whole bunch of crazy stuff that's just now kind of being turned into these creative tools, all entirely built on the foundation of machine learning and training your own algorithms and all the things that you talk about, these depth mapping information, this like weird, like pixel sorting, like data moshing, all of that stuff comes from within the cloud. And now like what's possible, what tools can we make, what things can we build off of that are just going to continue to iterate and continue to work on the foundation that's already there. So, and for what it's worth, for the people listening, I don't know anything about any of this. I don't know how to code. You know, I'm not an engineer, but I've been editing videos and creating things for a very, very long time. And I think, you know, the CEO told me, he's like, we need somebody like you at this company because we have a bunch of engineers and developers and people that are really good at what they do, but you know, you're good at what you do in your own way. And so now I'm just trying to figure out how I can not sound like an idiot when I come to a meeting and I'm like, oh yeah, the vector parameters and you know, like what I don't know. I'm like, yeah. I'm just like a kid in a candy store at this point.
Oh, that's really neat. So we've touched on a couple of the more obvious sort of applications of AI and machine learning as far as you know, rotoscope and some of the object removal and things like that. How do you think going forward? Because we kind of mentioned this before the stream, and it's come up in other contexts as well. Are people being pushed out? Are humans being pushed out of the content creation workflow, or what?
Yeah, the uprising of the machines is going to be video editors out of a job. That's what.
I feel like some people feel that way because
people do feel that way.
Yeah,
people absolutely feel that way. And here's the thing, right? Like, if you look into carpentry, I don't know anything about carpentry, but if you talk to a carpenter, he'd be like, oh yeah, there's this nail gun now that does like this crazy thing with the nails, and it's like a magnetic blah blah blah. And like you're like, you have no idea, right? But that carpenter knows how to use that tool to be effective at his job.
Sure.
It's the same thing in video editing. All those yes men, all those agency people, they're like, my nephew said TikTok is the thing. Okay, cool. It's like you come to a person, you're like, hey, the background of this video is unusable. What do you got, right? You as the editor are going to be like, oh, I know how to do like single click rotoscoping and I can make this, very easy. And it's you knowing about the tools in order for you to be successful at the job. That's why it matters. And I think I used the airline pilot analogy with you earlier, which is when you fly in a plane, the plane is almost entirely on autopilot almost the entire time. Turbulence, apparently, so I've been told, is wind underneath the plane pushing it up and then autopilot correcting the altitude. And that's why you feel turbulence.
Oh.
But the pilots are there just in case something goes wrong. The pilots are trained to navigate the problems that may happen in a flight, just like video editors are going to be trained to navigate the problems that happen with a video, and using these tools that are being built with AI and machine learning and otherwise are going to be the things that are going to allow them to be successful, get from A to B in the shortest amount of time, and have the client be super happy with, what is going on, right? And I made a joke internally at Runway about this, that I wanted to make an ad of just like an editor receiving an email, and it's like, version 5 _ final _ seriously, the final version. And the client's like, one more quick change, but like, we need to remove this thing in the background of this video. How long is it going to take? And the editor's like, oof, that's gonna be 2 days of work on top of my already overtime hours. And they're like, whatever it takes. And then the editor opens up Runway, single click, paints it out. It's done in 30 seconds. And then they go to the beach and like enjoy the rest of their time. Right. And it's like, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. It's going to be up to video professionals and editors to understand the capabilities of the tools that they have access to. And in no way are those tools going to like take over their jobs. I think that's a silly way of thinking, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I love that. I love that ad idea. It reminds me of the Star Trek engineer concept. Like, yeah, I know it's going to take me an hour to do that, but I told him it's going to take me 6.
Yeah,
because then I look like a miracle worker when I get it done faster.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, under promise, over deliver. That's the key to all of this.
I love it. This is a good question from Twitch. I want to touch on this. Simi86 asks, "Are you planning a standalone version? From my point of view, it's a security risk working in a browser. I'm bound by NDAs and simply can't send footage of upcoming products to external sources." And that is a good. I think that's great, because big companies, Disney or whatever, is rumored to like carry their film in armored trucks and things like that, and it's super weird and scary. So
I think the simplest answer to this whole thing is it's still being worked on, right? We're still generating users, we're still building new tools, and we're also building tools for people who aren't video professionals, right? Like video professionals like me, or I'm assuming this person, are actually like a much smaller percentage of our user base. So it's trying to cater to everyone all the time, which is not a easy problem to solve. But I would counter that with, well, are you keeping files on Dropbox? Have you ever sent a Frame.io link? What's the difference, right? That content exists somewhere else that's not your own internal server. How are you sharing these things right now? How are you getting feedback? The purpose of the Runway stuff is not to be a video review platform. It's to be an entirely web-based editing platform. And so if you are working with another editor who's in another time zone, for example, right? If I'm working with somebody in London, I'm working while they're sleeping and they're working while I'm sleeping. And imagine just uploading all the footage to one place and being able to have multiple people work on it at different times or at the same time, whatever. Like, that's the future that I think is really cool. So there might be NDA concerns. There might be privacy concerns. I know that the guys at Runway take that very seriously. I'm not the one to talk about it, right? Because I'm just here to like teach people and to get people excited about it. But yeah, it's a legitimate concern, but I think that it's a concern that could be also put into multiple different platforms that you use and you don't even think about it. So just because it's new doesn't mean it's wrong. And in the future, I'm positive it will continue to get better.
Yeah, I think so. I think you guys got a great start going on here. Earlier, and this just kind of popped into my head. Earlier, you'd mentioned like, oh, I could just run down and grab a Chromebook and continue editing. I suppose does this platform work real well with like mobile? Like, could I pull this up on my iPad or something and work okay?
I haven't tried to access it via an iPad yet.
I'll have to try that.
I probably should, but I have like a Windows laptop, I have a Mac laptop, and I have my desktop, and it's all browser based. So it works, you know, as long as you have a stable internet connection.
Yeah.
I should probably try the iPad thing though, because I've had other people ask me that too, and I'm like, I don't know. And it's like you're now the second or third person asked me, so I should probably try.
Oh, well,
I see the response. Actually, I'm just a hardware YouTuber, and if I don't want to ever have the chance to test an upcoming processor from Intel and answer the question, I keep all of it on a local server. Okay. I'm probably not the first person to tell you this, but you are probably in the 1% of people that are doing this kind of stuff. Maybe super hyper specific, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. It's just very specific to you, and I don't think that that copies over to other people doing other things. So
yeah,
it's a case by with everything with editing. It's a case by case situation,
right? And I understand from that angle in particular, especially Intel, very strict about their NDAs and stuff, and so I understand the concern from that angle.
Yep, I did some work with Intel at Team Liquid, and their NDA process is extreme.
Outrageous.
I get it. Yeah,
we get it. Even our own review stuff, like for Puget, is So I get it.
You get it. Yeah, you don't want anybody leaking what the next gen anything is going to be and all this stuff, and so you have to. It impacts their bottom line on like sales data. In the creative world, if you know, we've had things leak at Team Liquid where somebody accidentally puts a video in a playlist unlisted, but then it still shows up in the playlist for some reason. And why YouTube hasn't changed that feature, I have no idea why. But like, things leak, things happen. It's it's part of the process and learning and growing. And you can't fix something unless you failed at it to give you the ammo to fix it. So it's all in the spirit of good fun.
Right.
I see Heather in the chat too. She's one of my editors. Yeah, she's one of my ex-editors at Team Liquid. Just an absolutely incredible human being, very, very creative, multidisciplined in motion design, editing, illustration. She's crazy. She's really good.
Let's go. Hi.
Right on. Hi, Heather. Thanks for coming.
I'm going to pull back to a question we got earlier from YouTube, but also because I'm going to pivot off of it into another topic as well, or a similar one. Ryan McNay, I hope I said that right.
What's up, Ryan?
He asks, you've obviously been very successful growing a community. What tips do you have for someone looking to grow a social account, in particular YouTube, I think?
YouTube specifically is authenticity and consistency. Those are the two things that to me have been the metric of success for my channel. I think when I wasn't taking YouTube seriously, my dog is going crazy downstairs. I'm sorry. I don't know if you hear that.
Okay.
When I wasn't taking YouTube seriously, I was uploading every month, I wasn't really, but then as soon as I started uploading once a week, I really started to see a shift in my numbers because people expected that kind of content. And then on top of that is authenticity, right? Not sugarcoating stuff, being very honest with your community about why you like something or why you dislike something, but also being open to being wrong. I feel like that's a big thing right now with all the weird Joe Rogan stuff that's going on Spotify and all these people up in arms and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why people stopped being okay with being wrong. Everyone feels like they need to be right all the time, all of a sudden. And it's very strange. And there's been times where I've done a video and then somebody in my comments will be like, hey, there's actually a better way to do this. And I'll do another video and be like, hey, somebody told me a better way. I'm going to show you guys because I learned myself, and being vulnerable in that way and being okay with being wrong. And it all boils down to authenticity and not trying to chase what other people are doing, because I could have, when I started my channel, I looked at the landscape of tutorials. Very rarely people showed their face. It was very monotone. And nobody edited their tutorials. I remember watching one specifically where for 10 minutes, this guy was working on something and he goes, oh crap, I messed up. Undo. And and I was trying to follow along with this video and I was like, what the hell just happened? Why wouldn't you edit the tutorial to be right? You're okay with it being wrong and then going back? It made no sense. And so when I looked at the landscape of tutorials, I saw my niche, which is kind of entertaining. I'm going to show my face. I'm going to make some jokes and I'm going to try to make complicated things easy enough to understand. And that was what I based my channel on. And then coupled with the fact that I wasn't doing it for monetary reasons, I was doing it just because I wanted the information to be out there for people was kind of my metric of success. It's not going to be the same with everybody, but the two things that I would say are authenticity and consistency.
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed too, with others who've gotten this question and then even beyond, you have to love the doing part, the process, not to steal the podcast title from Mike Pesci, but you have to, it's not just the goal, right? It's not just the end result. You have to love the doing or you're going to get, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to, because in order to get really good at something, you have to have a fundamental understanding of all parts of it. And unless you do it yourself, you'll never truly understand.
Yeah.
And that's super important. Like if you're going to run a restaurant, spend time in the kitchen, spend time behind the line, like spend time in front of, spend time with the servers, spend time with the hostess. Like you need to understand all aspects of it in order to run a successful business. And so in that sense, it's like, I think back then, like, you know, our parents' generation, probably it's like you clock in, you clock out, you have your job and that's it. And now in today's day and age, it's kind of like you have to have multiple jobs and multiple skill sets and be able to do so many things. It can get a little bit overwhelming, but ultimately I think that's breeding a different community of creatives that's like really inspiring.
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden you have this person that had to learn how to do this thing that now sparks this idea to combine it with this other thing that they know how to do. And then that's how, you know, you get these like magic things that happen. So I'm all about it. I don't think that it should be a norm for companies to expect their employees to do 200 different jobs, right? But
sure,
I think it's encouraged for people to learn how to do all the jobs. It's a double-edged sword in that sense, but that's where
it's important to have an understanding of your part of the process. If we're talking about a work scenario, because what I do is going to affect the person who's coming next. Right. And like the way we build PCs at Puget Systems, you know, if I put this thing in an inappropriate way, then that's going to mess up the person who's got to deal with that later. And then and then either I have to redo it or they do or whatever. And so it is important to understand how the things that you do are going to affect the entire process.
And by the way, if we could like gas up Puget Systems for a minute, seriously, customer service is a huge part of anything. And when you're having it, like, as my PC was getting built, you guys were sending me photos of like Post-it notes that had been like hand scribbled on. It's like, your PC's being cleaned, Ian. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so nice. And like, I had pictures of like who was working on it and people checking in on me. And then when you send me my computer, I get a whole folder full of like benchmark tests of like everything. Well, fantastic. Literally like one of the best experiences with something that's like pretty technical for the most part from top to bottom. Like, seriously, you guys do such a good job with that. And I would encourage anybody who's wanting a computer or wanting to build their own. Don't build it yourself. Just have Puget do it. It was such a nice experience. And it goes back to the whole time versus money equation. Like have the professionals do it. This is their business, is to do this really well. And you guys do it really well. So shout out to you. It's really, really great experience.
Yeah, that's a big thing, right? It's your job is making videos. Our job is figuring out the best PC so that you can make your videos.
But like other companies claim to do that too, and they don't do it very well. Like, you know, insert faceless corporation who's like, we build gaming PCs. No, not really. You know, like you guys, I had multiple interviews with your team to like ask me about my workflow and to talk about all the things that I was doing in order for you to recommend something that is literally going to work the best for how I work. I've never had that with anything else.
Not to turn this into a salesy thing, but I posted a link to the landing page we have that involves your workstation, and I'm like, this is very strange. Why is this a Xeon W33? Like that's weird.
Yeah.
And forgive me, boss, for not being very educated on our entire product line, but I went and looked. Okay, so it's an After Effects machine. I went and looked, and I go, well, what is this? Seems strange, because Xeons are generally not good for video editing. So I looked, and I went digging through our own recommended hardware and figured out why. And it was a combination of things. It was one, I think we were targeting the multi-frame rendering for After Effects in particular, but also all
the other stuff.
Tied to that is the requirements for like massive amounts of RAM and processing cores, like all this multi-threading that's happening, that's more important than the overall speed. And I was like, aha, now that made sense.
Yeah, and for what it's worth too, like when I was doing my interviews and going through my workflow, and this is very my workflow, I have, and this is not a joke, I have Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere, Ableton Live, Blender, and like a bunch of other like Figma and like all these other things open at the same time. And I'm dragging and dropping assets in between all of them. And I'm doing all this stuff. And I'm bringing a music track into Ableton. I'm editing it for the thing that I'm working on and bringing it back in. Like I needed that. And they were like, you need this. And I was like, I do? Okay. Like, I don't know any better, but I just explained my workflow and how I work. And they were like, oh, okay, cool. We got you. Like that's, yeah. So I was super happy with that. Cause I don't know what I don't know. What's Heather asking? Explain your new channel as well. Oh, I see. Yes, you like your tutorials to move fast. I talk very fast, and that is good. One of the most commented things on my YouTube channel. Like, dude, I have to watch you in 0.5x speed. Slow down.
That's what that's for.
I'm just excited. Yeah. Thanks. It's better than welcome to this exciting tutorial. Today we're. I see that too often. I can't with that. I actually was weirdly inspired by Philip DeFranco, the way that he edits his videos.
Yes.
The next clip is starting like on the very tail end of the last syllable of his previous word. And like, that's how I paste my videos. Cause I actually found it like weirdly okay to do it that way. And that's, I would say in the normal editing world, like that would probably be a no-fly zone to do something like that, but it is a style. And you were saying earlier about like vlog style versus whatever, like it's a style of video that just works really well. And I didn't see anybody else really doing it that way. So another way for me to just speed myself up, you know? Yeah. We like speed around here.
Right. That's kind of what we do. To swing back around to some of the social media stuff. I'm curious of your opinions on not so much social media in general, but more the evolution of video content on social media. It seems like YouTube is still very much long form content, but even that has changed. And now you have things like Reels and Stories and TikTok. TikTok started, or Vine even was like 6 seconds, and then now TikTok's like 30 seconds to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think Instagram has a max of 10 minutes for a reel, I think.
A reel, yeah.
And
it
so
changes all the time.
How do you feel about that as a content creator and an editor?
I have a lot of opinions here. But first, I'd like to give a moment of silence for Vine.
Vine was a good one.
Vine was a good one. This goes back to one person doing too many jobs, I think, nowadays, where editors, and not even just in esports, are the people that I know. I hear people commenting on my YouTube channel, like friends of mine, I've been working on this video and it's in 16:9 and it's a 4.5 minute piece. And then all of a sudden in the 11th hour, somebody's like, we need 9:16 vertical. We need a 30-second, we need a square version. We need this version and that version. It's like, okay, if you shot something to be 16:9 and the whole thing is supposed to take place in like a widescreen format, when you chop it down and like fit it into something else, it just like sometimes doesn't work. And people think it's easy to do, like, oh, just squish it into a vertical frame. It's like, no, it doesn't really work like that. And like, no offense to Adobe, they tried with auto reframe sequence. It just doesn't work well. Like it really like, it had so much potential. It really did. And it's like, it starts to get too confusing at some point. But anyway, the other thing that really bothers me is that like, I see a lot of brands make a video on Instagram and they don't take time to consider like the UI at the top of Instagram and like the side buttons. And so they have like content that's like running into it and there's like text getting lost in the sides and at the top. And it's kind of a mess. It's a mess. And the reason it's a mess is because it's changing all the time. And it's like impossible to keep track of. Like tomorrow, TikTok could introduce X amount of second videos and they could remove this thing and Instagram could change. And like they change their name to Metaverse for some reason. Like there's just, it's the Wild West out there. But it's tough, man. It's really tough because sometimes you're forced as an editor to take something that's 2 minutes long. And when somebody's like, we need a 15, you're like, okay, you realize that's an entirely different skill set, right? Like if we had gone 10 years in the past, you would like hire a trailer editor specifically to like come in and make a short form thing that accomplishes the goals that you want to accomplish. But now all of a sudden everyone, regardless of your skill level, is required to know how to be a trailer editor, a long form editor, a commercial editor, a marketing person, an advertising specialist, a copywriter. Like, you kind of have to like know how to do all this stuff, at least to some level, so that somebody else could come in and be like, you gave me an idea. Here's the real thing. It's not a perfect system.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah. Do you feel that the overall quality of content is changed?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier before we started. There's this culture that's kind of been brought to light of like everybody having some sort of ADD, where it's just like the scrolling mechanic and like the dopamine hit of like seeing likes and liking somebody else's video and just like on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. So content has been getting shorter, certainly, but in that process of becoming shorter, it's getting more watered down. Like, you need to get a complicated point across within 6 seconds of an opening shot, and like it needs to be effective. So to me, a vast majority of the stuff that you see while you're scrolling on these platforms have kind of been watered down a little bit. And there's companies out there that like have really amazing missions as a company and like really incredible values that are completely getting overlooked because their advertising strategy needs to hook people. It's all based on this like customer retention. Like, it's weird. The mechanic of it is weird. And so I would love to see like more authenticity being brought back into this space. But like, you probably have a bunch of people at the top of these companies that are telling people that authenticity doesn't sell. And then it's like, well, where do I exist in this landscape? So yeah, I mean, there's some people that are doing it really well when it comes to content stuff. And there's some people that have tried to pivot and unfortunately just kind of started digging their own grave. But that's the evolution of digital content creation, I suppose.
Yeah. I know for my own sake, I've noticed a pivot, it seems, where at least in influencers, right? Where it does seem that the more small communities are kind of more important, and I think it lends that opinion of authenticity is becoming more important.
Yeah.
And I have mixed feelings there myself because and this is kind of a weird thing to say because I am a marketer, but it seems as though marketers ruin everything eventually. You know, like billboards were a cool thing and then now they're everywhere, and commercials and that sort of thing. And being a social media marketer myself, like, but it can feel that way. We're like, man, this was really cool and authentic and joyous and touching, and now it like soulless and it's not.
Yeah. I think there's a few people that are doing it really well. God, I forget the guy's name. Oh, what's that? Oh yeah. So, are you familiar with Zach King at all?
Magic. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Not Matt.
No, it's VFX, but it's like super freaking cool.
Super cool. And like recently he's kind of shifted into this like doing everything practically phase, which I find really interesting. And he's been posting behind the scenes videos. But so people like Zach King, there's a guy on TikTok and Instagram. His name is Kevin Perry. I think he does a really good job of it too, where they're doing like you know what you get when you're approaching them about something. And they've done something so unique and so authentic that it's like you almost don't care that you're being marketed to, right? Like, Zach King has this really amazing collaboration they did with Oreos where he like is dunking it in a cup, but then he does this weird perspective thing and the Oreo ends up being huge and he's like carrying it and then he falls in the milk. And it's like this weird practical VFX exploration, but it's clearly an ad for Oreo, but it's so authentic to his style that you almost don't care. And I think that there's companies and ads that have positioned themselves really, really well. I think like some of the Old Spice stuff with Terry Crews did a really good job of that, where it just becomes this like cultural like phenomenon. And it's like, you know, Snickers did it for a while where it's like, you're not yourself when you're hungry. And they had all these celebrities that like stuff like that is really great because it's funny, it's self-contained. And at the end of the day, it's like, you feel like you don't care that you're being advertised to. And I almost think that that's just as important as acquiring a customer, is like having the person walk away from that being like, they're a good company. You know, I might not buy Oreos today, but like, I respect it. You know, that's kind of what everybody's wanting, at least. And so when you're an influencer, I would urge anybody who's an influencer to not just be searching for paychecks, because the ones that are authentic are the ones that end up like really resonating with people.
Yeah.
I was starting off. There's a guy on TikTok, I forget his name, but he did this video where he was like, "Hey, we're being sponsored by this underwear company," and he goes to his girlfriend, and she's like, "I'm not wearing that on camera," and he's like, "Come on, like they're paying us for this video," and she's like, "No, you're on your own." And so then he puts on the women's underwear and he does both parts, and he's like going back and forth with himself, and it was so good, and it was funny because like that argument probably actually happened between him and his girlfriend, and then he just made it into a piece of content. So yeah, stuff like that. It all loops back around to authenticity. And the people that I partner with on my YouTube channel, it's the exact same way. Like I partner with people who I believe in what they're doing and who would authentically resonate with the people that are watching my videos, right? Like, which is why I love the partnership with you guys, because it's like there's a whole conversation to be had about time versus money and the customer service thing, and having a machine that can keep up with you instead of buying a machine that you think is going to keep up with you only to like hit the ceiling within a month of using it. Like I've pushed this thing hard, very hard, and it's still kicking ass, man. So yeah, it's authenticity. Beat it into people's heads.
Yeah. Do you feel there's a resistance to that from big companies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because usually big companies will either have their own internal like marketing people, or they're partnering with a long-standing agency that they've been with for a long time, right? Yeah. And so I think they just become numb to this other thing that exists, and they're only marketing for themselves, and they're not thinking about like the underwear collaboration video, like what that guy would have done with me going to him and being like, "Hey, can you do a video for like men's and women's underwear?" And like he comes back with this really hilarious sketch. People don't think about that. And this is not to put a knock on like company initiatives, but because the whole like Me Too movement and like people are afraid to talk online and like COVID, masks, no mask, Republican, Democratic, the landscape is very strange right now. And so I think everyone kind of agrees that like the safest option is the best option.
Yeah.
And usually that just kind of comes with a lot of creative handcuffs that just force you to produce this thing that's kind of okay.
Sure.
And it's the people that are taking risks and betting on the small guy, or like people with a very niche community, that I think are seeing some of the best results, because it just ends up being so authentic to their space and their fan base that it's a win for those people that want to take that gamble.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think of like Wendys. It comes up a lot in social media space as
very polarizing too.
As a kind of a success story of they don't, you know, their social media at least doesn't speak with a corporate voice. Like there's somebody behind there, or a team of somebody's who were allowed to take a risk. You know, they have like a roast day. Like, you know, and that could have backfired. It could have hurt the brand really bad.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And could still at some point, you know, the opinions of the masses is very volatile and sways back and forth. But like, and you see people trying to replicate that sort of a thing, but that feels weird because it's like, but also at the same time, how does that work when it doesn't really seem to match with like Wendys as a brand?
I think that's why it worked. You know, sometimes opposites attract in that sense, and going so left field with something like that actually ended up working out, because up until that point, fast food companies, all they were doing was like peddling their new menu item.
Sure.
And like, that's all they needed to do. And all of a sudden Wendy's started coming out and like roasting people individually on the internet. It's just like, it was so out of character that I think that's why it ended up working out. But that wouldn't work for everybody.
No.
Especially now that Wendy's has already done it. Now you get all these people that are like, you're just trying to be like Wendy's and you're not doing a good job. So it's, you have to be a trailblazer, and you have to believe in the thing that you're doing come hell or high water. Right. And like, that could have easily tanked Wendy's stock, and like people stopped going there because they thought it was rude or whatever. But like, you know, Twitter is a place where a bunch of people are kind of like roasty anyway. And so it just ended up working out really well.
Yeah.
I respect him for it. I don't eat Wendy's, but I respect him.
Oh man, those spicy nugs though, man, I can't.
Yeah. I had a phase where I was like eating Baconators a lot.
Yeah.
And not a lot. Like once every couple of weeks, I'd be like, ooh, a Baconator. But yeah, I haven't had Wendy's in probably like 6 months, 8 months. I don't know. It's been a while.
So we're coming up real close. Well, we're about to pass over our hour here in like 5 seconds. So I
Are
want to
we?
throw,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I want to throw one final question. I'm curious what you are excited about, whether it's Runway or just in a general sense of video editing and content creation. What are you excited about in the next, so like short term, maybe this year, and then also maybe 5 years?
Short term. Oh man, that's a tough question. Well, 5 years, I'm going to answer first.
Sure.
5 years, I think if internet speeds keep going up and up and up, and like people have access to more stable internet and all these things, machine learning and AI tools get better and better and better, the world of creating content is going to be very different. And I've seen some demos that are kind of like a lie in a sense, right? Like, have you seen those things where you sketch on a piece of paper, like some like literally like child looking landscape, and then all of a sudden NVIDIA comes up with this like hyper realistic landscape that's like not real? Okay.
That's pretty legit.
Yes, that happens, but it doesn't happen instantaneously. And it takes an entire warehouse full of GPUs to do that over the course of like hours, right? Like it takes a really long time. So seeing that gap get closed to more like real time stuff. And that's why I think that what Runway is doing is really interesting, because it doesn't work perfectly yet, but it's extremely close to real time. Like it works very fast, like scary fast. Yeah. So when that gap gets closed, I think that's going to be really, really interesting. And it's going to allow creators to do the A+B=C and like build things that have never been built before and experiment with all these different things and create amazing, wonderful things. And I'm super excited about that. Short term, I'm going to go kind of political, but I'm excited for like people to start interacting with other human beings again.
Sure.
You know, getting together and like actually collaborating and getting in the same room and bouncing ideas off each other. And like, you know, it's just a different energy when you're in the same room as somebody else or with a group of people. So I'm really excited for that to start happening again too, because once we bring the human interaction and like society part back, that's going to allow the technical side to like really have more leverage, because you're going to get all these people that are like, well, what if we could do this thing? And they all get together, and then that thing is being built. And then it kind of like the scales need to tip so far back to the right and then like come center again. So center is 5 years from now. We're over here. It needs to go this way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited just to see how it all shakes out. I don't know. It's the world's a crazy place. You know, we're all just stardust after all.
Right. Oh, I say this often enough, but we're living in like the best time ever, in my opinion. To be a person is so freaking cool right now. It is awesome. I know there's like craziness and negativity and some bad stuff, but at the same time, like there is a lot of good stuff going on out there, and it's amazing. What a time to be alive. The future is now.
Yes. My advice to everybody out there listening is look for the stuff that's like that, and avoid the stuff that's just all doom and gloom. And, you know, CNN stands for Crisis News Network or whatever. Like find the cool stories, you know, like follow Reddit accounts that are like r/uplifting, you know, like things that are just like going to make you smile. More of that and less of all the other crazy stuff, because we have too much of that already.
I always like make positivity louder.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. That's a good note to end on.
Yeah. So on that bombshell, to steal from Jeremy Clark, we're gonna say we're gonna wrap it up here. So thank you, Ian, for joining me
Thank you for having me again.
You were on here a few months back. This was great. This was a really good conversation. I'm glad to have had you. This was very cool. I hope we get to talk again in the future. We'll see how things have changed for you in Runway. And I always like to thank the audience as well for joining us today. We do this every Wednesday. Like 99% of the Wednesdays. I have to skip some. But thank you, everybody who joins and asks questions and shares and tells their friends and all that stuff. We do this every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time here on YouTube and Twitch mainly, but I think I put it out there to Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So, is there anything you'd like to shout out before we go?
Everybody out there, just keep being awesome, keep creating, keep, you know, experimenting with tools. I'll plug Runway. You can sign up right now, free trial, use all the crazy tools that we're releasing, runwayml.com. My YouTube channel, learn how to edit stuff. Follow me on social media if you want to, at not Ian Sands. I mainly post pictures of my kid on Instagram and tweet about gaming stuff, but you know, you can get in touch with me.
Yeah. Awesome.
And that's it.
All
And
right.
I'm gonna start growing my beard out for the next episode that we do together.
Okay.
Like
I'll give you
I
8
feel like
to 10
such a
months.
like I'm like a prepubescent boy, and you're like some like mythical wizard over here. It's like such a
8 to 10 months. We'll be back. We'll see how far you've gotten. All
Thanks.
right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So that's it. And that's all. We'll see you later next time.
Awesome.
Bye.
See you, everybody.